My name is Dr. Celine Marwood, and I'm 42 years old. I'd spent 8 years as Senior Strategy Analyst at Crowhurst Innovations, pouring my expertise into every project, every campaign, every crisis that threatened the company's survival. I'd pulled us back from the edge more times than anyone knew. But on that Tuesday morning, standing on the auditorium stage during our quarterly all-hands meeting, none of that mattered. Benjamin Crowhurst, our CEO, had called me up to present our latest strategy results. I delivered a flawless presentation showing how we'd increased efficiency by 37%. The room had applauded. Then Benjamin took the microphone back, his smile sharp and cold. "Thank you, Celine," he said, his voice projecting to every corner of the packed room. "This is a good reminder for everyone here." He paused for effect, looking directly at me. "Employees like Celine are easily replaceable. Never forget that." The room erupted in nervous laughter. Some people looked uncomfortable, but most just laughed along with the boss. I stood there frozen, the microphone still warm in my hand, feeling 300 pairs of eyes on me. My face burned. My throat closed. And something inside me, something that had been bending for years under Benjamin's casual cruelty, finally snapped. I walked off that stage with my head high, but inside, I made a vow that would change everything. One day, he'll learn exactly how irreplaceable I am. I made it back to my desk before the shaking started. My hands trembled as I set down my presentation folder, the applause for my work still echoing mockingly in my head. Colleagues walked past my office without making eye contact. Some whispered to each other, stealing glances my way. Nobody stopped to say anything supportive. Nobody acknowledged what had just happened. I'd been publicly humiliated, and everyone knew it was safer to pretend they hadn't noticed. I sat in my chair and stared at the framed PhD certificate on my wall. Dr. Celine Marwood, Strategy and Business Innovation. I'd fought for that degree while working full-time, studying until 3 in the morning, sacrificing everything to become someone who couldn't be dismissed. But Benjamin had just dismissed me in front of the entire company with a single sentence. The humiliation triggered memories I usually kept buried, growing up in a trailer park, wearing donated clothes to school, being told by teachers I'd never amount to anything. I'd clawed my way out of that poverty through intelligence and determination. I'd proven every doubter wrong. And now, after years of excellence, I was being told I was replaceable, disposable, nothing. My computer pinged with a new email. The subject line made my stomach drop, organizational restructuring. I opened it with trembling fingers. Effective immediately, I was being reassigned to junior-level project support tasks. A demotion in everything but official title. Benjamin was making his point crystal clear. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find my belongings had been moved. My spacious office with a window view was now occupied by Trevor, a 26-year-old with half my experience and none of my credentials. My new workspace was a cubicle near the intern area. No privacy, no door, no dignity. Just a desk surrounded by cheap fabric walls. Benjamin walked by as I was unpacking my things, his suit perfectly tailored, his expression smug. "Morning, Celine," he said cheerfully. "How's the new setup?" I kept my voice steady. "It's fine." Good. You know, you should be grateful. Replaceable workers don't usually get second chances." He paused, watching my reaction. "I'm being generous keeping you on at all." I said nothing, just continued arranging my desk with methodical precision. He wanted a reaction. Tears, anger, resignation. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. But inside, a plan was beginning to form. Something cold and calculating that surprised even me. "Well, enjoy your day," Benjamin said, disappointed by my composure. He walked away, already focused on someone else to diminish. That afternoon, I overheard 2 executives talking in the break room. They didn't notice me standing just outside. "The debt's worse than we thought," one said quietly. "If we don't secure major funding in the next 90 days, Crowhurst Innovations is finished." "Benjamin's in denial," the other replied. "He's spending money we don't have, playing CEO while the company collapses." I filed that information away carefully. The company was drowning. And Benjamin, too arrogant to see it, was about to learn a very expensive lesson. That weekend, I did something I'd never done before. I accessed company documents I technically wasn't supposed to see. Benjamin's reorganization had stripped me of official clearance, but he'd forgotten that I'd helped build most of our security systems. I knew the backdoors. What I found was devastating. Crowhurst Innovations was hemorrhaging money. Bad investments, extravagant executive expenses, failed product launches that Benjamin had insisted on despite every analyst warning him, all of it had created a financial disaster. The company had 90 days, maybe less, before bankruptcy became inevitable. Major creditors were already circling. The board was panicking. And Benjamin was too busy playing power games to notice his empire crumbling. I spent the entire weekend reviewing every financial document, every contract, every vulnerability. By Sunday night, I understood exactly how fragile Crowhurst Innovations had become. Monday morning, my personal email contained something unexpected. A message from an address I didn't recognize. Dr. Marwood, your work has not gone unnoticed. We'd like to discuss an opportunity. Are you available for a meeting this week? It was signed by someone named Caroline Voss, managing partner at Voss Venture Capital. I'd never heard of her or the firm. But something about the timing felt significant, almost fated. I replied immediately, available Tuesday at 2 p.m. Tuesday couldn't come fast enough. While Benjamin paraded around the office pretending everything was fine, I was planning my exit, and possibly his downfall. The meeting was at an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place where business deals worth millions happened over expensive wine and discretion. Caroline Voss turned out to be someone I recognized immediately. Professor Voss, who taught my graduate strategy seminar 12 years ago. But she looked different now, polished, powerful, wearing success like armor. Celine, she said warmly, standing to shake my hand. Or should I say Dr. Marwood? I've been following your career. I sat across from her, confused and intrigued. Professor Voss, I didn't know you were in venture capital. I left academia 5 years ago and never looked back. Built Voss Capital from a small fund to one of the most successful in the region. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp and assessing. I've been watching your work at Crowhurst Innovations for years, Celine. Every strategy you've published, every turnaround you've engineered. You're wasted there. I didn't know what to say. I saw the quarterly meeting live stream, she continued, her voice hardening. Benjamin Crowhurst calling you replaceable after you saved his company repeatedly. That man is a fool. She slid a folder across the table. I want to invest in you, Celine. Not in Crowhurst's dying company. In you. I'm offering seed funding to launch your own firm. $2 million to start. Full autonomy. Your vision, your rules, your success. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The offer was real, documented, waiting for my signature. Why? I asked. Because talent like yours shouldn't be wasted on mediocre men. And because I believe you'll turn that 2 million into 20 million within 3 years. She smiled. Prove me right. I gave Benjamin my resignation the following Monday. I'd spent the weekend preparing, making sure every detail was perfect, every bridge properly burned. When I walked into his office, he was on the phone, waving me in dismissively. I waited until he finished, then slid the single page across his desk. What's this? He asked, barely glancing at it. My resignation. Effective immediately. That got his attention. He picked up the letter, reading it quickly, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to contempt. You're quitting? After I graciously kept you on despite your limitations. I kept my voice perfectly neutral. Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Benjamin. I've learned a great deal. He laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Good luck finding another job at your level. You're not exactly in high demand. I have other plans. Oh really? He leaned back in his chair, enjoying this. What? Starting your own company? Celine, be realistic. You're a support analyst, not a leader. Nobody will take you seriously. I smiled then, small, knowing, Infuriating. We'll see. I turned and walked out before he could respond. Behind me, I heard him mutter, "Forgettable. Completely forgettable." 2 weeks later, I launched Marwood Strategies with Caroline's backing. The announcement went out to every major business publication, every industry newsletter, every connection I'd carefully cultivated over 8 years. Within 24 hours, my phone was ringing constantly. Clients Benjamin had lost, companies I'd helped during my time at Crowhurst, industry leaders who'd seen my work, they all wanted to talk to me. And Benjamin? He probably didn't even notice the press release. He was too busy playing king of a crumbling empire. My first major contract came from Meridian Tech, a company Benjamin had pursued aggressively for 6 months without success. They'd rejected Crowhurst Innovations repeatedly, citing concerns about strategy and execution. When Meridian's CEO called me personally, his voice was warm with relief. "Dr. Marwood, we've been hoping you'd go independent. Crowhurst lost our business because of Benjamin, not despite him. We want to work with you." The contract was substantial, $300,000 for a 90-day strategic overhaul. It was exactly the kind of high-profile project that would establish Marwood Strategies as a serious player. I delivered results in 30 days that Crowhurst had failed to achieve in a year. Meridian's efficiency increased by 42%, their costs dropped by 18%, and their market share grew for the first time in 3 years. They were so pleased they extended the contract and referred me to 2 other companies. By month 3, I had 5 clients and a growing reputation as the strategist who actually delivered results. Industry publications started calling for interviews. Business schools wanted me to guest lecture. And everywhere I went, people asked the same question: why did you stay at Crowhurst so long? I never badmouthed Benjamin publicly. I didn't need to. My success spoke louder than any complaint. But privately, I watched his company's continued decline with cold satisfaction. He'd called me replaceable. The market was proving him catastrophically wrong. Then Caroline called with news that would change everything. "Celine, North Peak Private Equity wants to meet with you. They're interested in a partnership that would give you the resources to start acquiring companies. This is huge." The partnership with North Peak Private Equity was unlike anything I'd imagined. They didn't just want to invest in Marwood Strategies, they wanted to expand it dramatically, giving me the financial muscle to acquire struggling companies and turn them around. "You have the talent," their managing director explained. "We have the capital. Together, we could build an empire of innovation firms, all running on your strategies and principles." The deal they offered was staggering. Access to $100 million in acquisition funds, with complete autonomy over which companies to target and how to restructure them. In exchange, North Peak would take 30% of profits while I retained full operational control. I signed without hesitation. Within a week, Marwood Strategies became Marwood Capital Group, a hybrid consultancy and investment firm with the power to not just advise companies, but own them outright. Caroline was ecstatic. "This is what I saw in you 12 years ago," she said over celebratory drinks. The ability to not just analyze systems, but rebuild them entirely. As part of the partnership, North Peak sent me their list of distressed assets, companies that were failing financially but had potential for turnaround if managed properly. I scrolled through the list casually, my wine glass halfway to my lips, when one name made me freeze. Crowhurst Innovations. The company was officially listed as a distressed asset, available for acquisition at a steep discount due to mounting debts and poor leadership. Benjamin's empire was on the auction block, and I had the money and authority to buy it. For a long moment, I just stared at that name on the screen. Then I started making phone calls. I spent 2 weeks conducting quiet due diligence on Crowhurst Innovations. What I discovered was worse than I'd expected. The company was weeks away from complete collapse. Debts had mounted to $37 million. Major clients had fled. Employee morale was at rock bottom, with several key people planning to resign. And Benjamin, incredibly, seemed oblivious to all of it. He was still throwing expensive company parties, still driving the luxury car the company paid for, still acting like a king while his kingdom burned. I learned that the board had tried confronting him multiple times about the financial crisis. He dismissed their concerns, blamed market conditions, and refused to consider any significant changes to his leadership style. The man was delusional, arrogant, and about to lose everything. I didn't feel triumphant when I learned all this. I felt something more complicated, a mixture of justice and pity. Justice because Benjamin had spent years belittling people, crushing spirits, acting like he was untouchable. And pity because I knew that hundreds of innocent employees would suffer if the company went bankrupt. Good people who'd worked hard and deserved better than Benjamin's incompetent leadership. That's when I made my decision. I would acquire Crowhurst Innovations. Not for revenge, though that would be satisfying, but because I could save those jobs, preserve something valuable, and teach Benjamin the lesson he desperately needed to learn. I called my lawyers and told them to begin preparing acquisition documents. We'd buy the company quietly through intermediaries, keeping my involvement secret until the deal was complete. Benjamin wouldn't know who was purchasing his empire until it was too late to stop it. The acquisition moved forward with surgical precision. My lawyers structured the purchase through a shell corporation, masking my involvement behind layers of legal entities. We offered to buy 49% of Crowhurst Innovations at a price the desperate board couldn't refuse. The deal closed on a Friday afternoon. I now owned controlling interest in the company that had called me Replaceable. Benjamin still had no idea. By Monday morning, every employee at Crowhurst Innovations received an email from the board. Major ownership restructuring has occurred. New majority stakeholder review process begins immediately. Further announcements forthcoming. I wasn't copied on the email. Officially, I no longer had any connection to the company. But I had friends still working there who forwarded it to me immediately, along with descriptions of the chaos that followed. People were panicking, rumors spreading wildly about who the new owner might be. Some thought it was a competitor preparing a hostile takeover. Others speculated about private equity vultures planning mass layoffs. Nobody suspected the truth. That the new owner was the woman Benjamin had humiliated 6 months ago, the replaceable analyst he dismissed without a second thought. I sat in my new office, spacious, elegant, overlooking the city, and allowed myself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Then I got back to work. The real confrontation was still coming, and I needed to be perfectly prepared for the moment when Benjamin finally understood what he'd lost and who had taken it from him. Benjamin's panic was immediate and visible. My contacts inside Crowhurst reported that he'd called emergency meetings with the board, demanding to know everything about the new stakeholder. But the board, bound by confidentiality agreements, could only tell him that the acquisition was legitimate and that a full review of company operations would begin within 30 days. He started calling competitors, trying to figure out which of his business rivals had bought into his company. He became paranoid, suspicious of everyone, seeing enemies everywhere. But he never once considered that the threat might come from someone he dismissed as insignificant. Then, 2 weeks after the acquisition closed, Benjamin did something I hadn't anticipated. He called me. My phone rang at midnight, his name appearing on the screen like a ghost from my past. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello," I said, my voice calm despite my racing heart. "Celine," Benjamin said, his voice strained with false cheerfulness. "I hope I'm not calling too late. I've been thinking about you." I waited, saying nothing. He continued, stumbling over his words slightly. "I've heard about your success with Marwood Capital. Very impressive. Truly. And I wanted to reach out because Crowhurst is going through some changes, and we could use someone with your talents on our board of directors." I almost laughed. "You want me to join your board?" "As an advisor, yes. Someone with strategic insight. Someone strong." He paused. "Someone we can trust." The irony was so thick I could barely breathe. 6 months ago, he'd called me replaceable in front of 300 people. Now he was begging me to save him. "You said I was replaceable," I replied quietly. "So replace me, Benjamin. You don't need my help." I hung up before he could respond. The next morning, my lawyers delivered the final acquisition documents to his office. The full acquisition closed 72 hours later. On paper, the company now known as Marwood Innovations had new majority ownership, new operational authority, and a new strategic direction. I owned Crowhurst Innovations. Benjamin just didn't know it yet. My lawyers scheduled an emergency shareholder meeting for Friday morning, mandatory attendance for all board members and executive leadership. The invitation listed the meeting's purpose as presentation of new ownership structure and strategic direction. Benjamin would be there. He had to be. His contract required attendance at all shareholder meetings. I spent the week before the meeting preparing meticulously. Every document organized, every strategy outlined, every legal protection in place. This wasn't just a takeover. It was a reckoning. And I would handle it with the professionalism Benjamin had never shown me. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. I dressed carefully in my best suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, projecting authority without arrogance. I arrived at Crowhurst headquarters an hour early, entering through a side door to avoid being seen. The conference room was massive, with a long table and leather chairs. I took my seat at the head of that table and waited. The board members filed in first, most of them recognizing me and looking confused. Then the executives. Then, finally, Benjamin. He walked in talking on his phone, confident and smug, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. He glanced toward the head of the table, saw me, and froze mid-sentence. His phone lowered slowly. His face drained of all color. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then I smiled and said, "Hello, Benjamin. Thank you all for coming. I'm Dr. Celine Marwood, and as of Monday, I am the majority owner of this company." The conference room exploded into shocked whispers. Board members turned to each other, confirming what they just heard. Executives pulled out their phones, presumably checking if this was real. And Benjamin just stood there, frozen in the doorway, looking like he'd been physically struck. I let the chaos settle naturally before continuing. "I've reviewed this company's operations extensively over the past month," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room. "What I found is deeply concerning. Mounting debt, failed strategies, declining client retention, and a corporate culture built on fear rather than excellence." I pulled up a presentation on the screen behind me, the same screen where I'd presented my last strategy results before Benjamin humiliated me. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Effective immediately, this company will be restructured as Marwood Innovations. We will maintain all existing employee contracts, preserve all current projects, and honor all client commitments. But we will fundamentally change how this organization operates. Benjamin finally found his voice. "You can't do this. I built this company." You drove this company to the edge of bankruptcy," I interrupted calmly. "The board voted to accept my acquisition offer because you left them no choice. It was either sell or collapse." I advanced to the next slide, which showed the company's financial decline over the past 3 years. Every failed decision mapped out clearly, every warning ignored, documented precisely. "The question before us now," I continued, "is what happens next? And specifically, what happens with current leadership that has proven consistently ineffective?" I looked directly at Benjamin. "I'm calling for a vote to remove the current CEO and restructure executive leadership under new management. All in favor?" Every hand in the room went up. Every hand except Benjamin's. Benjamin stood there watching his empire crumble, his face cycling through shock, rage, and something that might have been fear. Security was already standing by. I'd arranged that privately with the board earlier in the week. "The vote is unanimous," I said. "Benjamin Crowhurst, you are relieved of your duties as CEO effective immediately. You will be provided with the severance package outlined in your contract, and your personal belongings will be delivered to your home." "You can't do this," he shouted, his composure finally breaking completely. "I made this company. Without me." "Without you," I interrupted firmly, "this company might have survived. With you, it nearly died. Security will escort you out." He looked around the room desperately, searching for allies, for anyone who would defend him. But the board members avoided his gaze. The executives studied their papers. Everyone had made their choice, and it wasn't him. As security approached, Benjamin turned his fury on me. "You're doing this for revenge. Because I called you replaceable. You're petty and vindictive. I'm doing this because you're incompetent," I said, standing to face him directly. Your ego destroyed what could have been a great company. And yes, you humiliated me publicly for no reason other than your own insecurity. But this isn't revenge, Benjamin. This is business. And in business, results matter more than ego. Security took his arms gently but firmly. He tried to shake them off, still sputtering protests and threats, but they guided him steadily toward the door. The last thing he said before the door closed behind him was, "You'll regret this, Celine. You'll fail without me." The room sat in stunned silence after he left. Then one of the board members started clapping. Another joined. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding, not mockingly like they had during that horrible company meeting, but with genuine relief and hope. I let them finish, then called the meeting back to order. "We have a company to save," I said. "Let's get to work." The first week under new leadership was intense. I met with every department head individually, listening to their concerns, understanding what Benjamin's management style had cost them. The stories were heartbreaking. Talented people who'd been belittled and dismissed, innovative ideas shot down because Benjamin couldn't handle anyone else getting credit, entire divisions operating in fear of random firings. One woman from the product development team cried in my office. "He told me my ideas were worthless," she said. "But I've been working nights and weekends on a new platform that could revolutionize our service model. I couldn't show him because he'd destroy it out of spite." "Show me," I said. Her platform was brilliant, exactly the kind of innovation we needed. I greenlit it immediately and put her in charge of a team to develop it properly. That became my approach to everything. Find the talent Benjamin had buried, unleash the potential he'd suppressed, rebuild the culture he'd poisoned. I also called an all-hands meeting, the same auditorium where Benjamin had humiliated me, the same stage where he'd called me replaceable. The room was packed, every employee anxious about what new ownership would mean. I stood at that podium and told them the truth. "I worked here for 8 years," I said. "I know what it was like under Benjamin's leadership. The fear, the uncertainty, the feeling that your hard work didn't matter. That ends today." I outlined my vision: transparent communication, fair treatment, meritocracy instead of favoritism, and a culture where excellence was rewarded rather than punished. "Benjamin built this company on fear," I said. "We're going to rebuild it on respect." The applause was thunderous, and this time, it was real. 2 weeks after Benjamin's removal, he was waiting by my car when I left the office late one evening. I saw him standing in the parking garage shadows and felt a spike of instinctive fear. But I forced myself to walk normally, my keys ready in my hand just in case. "Celine," he said, stepping into the light. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled clothes, eyes red from lack of sleep. "We need to talk." "There's nothing to discuss, Benjamin. Please." His voice cracked on the word. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I stopped. Maybe it was pity, or curiosity, or the need to hear what he could possibly say after everything. 5 minutes, I said. He took a deep breath, struggling to compose himself. "Give me my job back. Not as CEO, I understand that. But something. Anything. I built this company from nothing. I gave it 15 years of my life. You can't just. I need to be part of it." I studied him carefully. "You built it on fear and ego. I'm building it on respect and results. There's no place for you in that vision." "I made mistakes," he admitted, the words seeming to physically pain him. "I know that now. But I can change. I can learn. Please, Celine. I'm begging you." The man who'd called me replaceable was now begging me for a job. The reversal was so complete it almost felt surreal. "You humiliated me in front of 300 people," I said quietly. "You demoted me out of spite. You called me forgettable when I resigned. Why would I ever trust you again?" He had no answer. Then something unexpected happened. He started crying. Full, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. And he said something that changed everything. "I was jealous," Benjamin choked out between sobs. "Of you. Your talent, your intelligence, The way people actually respected you. I spent my whole career pretending to be confident while feeling like a fraud. And you were everything I wished I could be. He sat down heavily on the parking garage concrete, no longer caring about his dignity. When you presented that strategy at the company meeting, everyone was impressed. Genuinely impressed. And I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand that you were better than me in front of everyone. So I said you were replaceable, because if I could make you small, maybe I'd feel big again. I stood there listening, feeling something between anger and pity. I destroyed my own company because I couldn't handle talented people threatening my ego, he continued. I pushed away everyone who could have helped me succeed because I was too insecure to let them shine. And now I've lost everything. My company, my reputation, my self-respect. Everything. He looked up at me, his face blotchy and desperate. I don't deserve forgiveness. I know that. But I need you to understand that I knew what I was doing was wrong. I knew I was hurting people. I just couldn't stop myself because my fear was bigger than my integrity. For a moment, I felt the urge to comfort him, to tell him it would be okay. But I resisted. Benjamin's pain was self-inflicted, earned through years of cruelty and arrogance. I wouldn't be his emotional caretaker just because he'd finally hit bottom. I hope you find peace, Benjamin, I said quietly. But you won't find it with me or at my company. Goodbye. I got in my car and drove away, leaving him sitting in the parking garage. In my rearview mirror, I saw him still sitting there, small and broken. I didn't feel triumphant. Just sad that it had come to this. A week later, a letter arrived at my office. Handwritten, on simple paper, with my name written carefully on the envelope. Inside was the most genuine apology I'd ever received. Benjamin had written 3 pages, detailing every moment he'd failed, not just with me, but with everyone. He acknowledged the culture of fear he'd created, the talent he'd driven away, the opportunities he destroyed through arrogance. I don't expect forgiveness, he wrote in closing. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what I did and why it was so deeply wrong. You were never replaceable, Celine. You were the most valuable person in that building, and I destroyed my company by refusing to admit it. The letter was raw and painful to read. I didn't forgive him. Forgiveness felt too easy, too quick for years of damage. But I acknowledged the attempt. I filed the letter away and tried to move forward. That same week, our quarterly results came in. Under the new leadership structure, with toxic management removed and talent finally empowered, Marwood Innovations' profits had surged by 300% in just 90 days. Client retention was up. Employee satisfaction scores had doubled. New business was flooding in faster than we could handle. We'd gone from the edge of bankruptcy to explosive growth in 3 months. Industry publications wanted interviews about the turnaround. Business schools wanted to study our restructuring as a case study. And everywhere, people wanted to know the same thing. How did you save a dying company so quickly? The answer was simple. I removed the person killing it and let talented people do their jobs. But I never said that publicly. I never mentioned Benjamin's failures or his cruelty. I just focused on what we were building, something better, something sustainable, something that valued people. The employees surprised me with an appreciation event 3 months into the restructuring. They'd planned it secretly, coordinating with my assistant to make sure I'd be available. When I walked into the main conference room expecting a normal meeting, I found decorations, cake, and over 100 people who'd gathered to celebrate what we'd built together. Sarah from product development presented me with a framed photo, a picture of the team working on her platform, the one I'd greenlit on my first week. Underneath was an inscription, to Dr. Marwood, who saw our potential when others saw only replaceable workers. I cried then, for the first time since this entire ordeal began. Not from sadness or anger, but from overwhelming gratitude that I'd survived Benjamin's cruelty and built something beautiful from the wreckage. People shared stories about how the new culture had changed their lives. How they felt valued for the first time in years. How they'd stopped dreading Monday mornings. How they'd recommended Marwood Innovations to talented friends looking for jobs because we'd become the kind of place people wanted to work. You didn't just save our jobs, one man said. You saved our dignity. Later, as the event was winding down, someone asked about a rumor that had been circulating. Is it true you're in talks with Global Tech Systems about a merger? I smiled. Where did you hear that? It's all over the industry news. They're saying you're being considered for CEO of the combined entity. I glanced at my assistant, who shrugged apologetically. The news had leaked earlier than we'd planned. I can't comment officially, I said. But yes, we're in discussions about a potential partnership that would benefit everyone here. The room erupted in excited chatter. This was big, possibly the biggest opportunity of my career. The merger negotiations with Global Tech Systems were intense and complex. They wanted Marwood Innovations' innovative culture and rapid growth model. We wanted their resources, market reach, and technological infrastructure. For 3 months, teams of lawyers and executives hammered out details. And through it all, one question kept appearing. Who would lead the merged entity? Global Tech's board was split between their current CEO Marcus Henley and me. Marcus had seniority and experience. I had momentum and results. The final negotiation session was scheduled at a neutral location, an upscale hotel conference center where both companies could present their visions. I arrived early, reviewing my presentation one last time. When I walked into the conference room, I stopped in shock. Benjamin was there. Not as a participant, but sitting in the audience section where observers and consultants waited. He was dressed professionally, taking notes on a tablet, looking nothing like the broken man from the parking garage. I approached the Global Tech representative. Why is Benjamin Crowhurst here? She looked uncomfortable. Mr. Crowhurst reached out to Marcus Henley directly, offering consulting services on innovation strategy. Marcus hired him 3 weeks ago as an independent contractor. We didn't realize he had history with your company. My jaw tightened. Benjamin was trying to worm his way back into relevance through Global Tech, positioning himself to undermine me even now. But I forced myself to stay professional. It's fine, I said, though it wasn't. Let's proceed with the presentations. The next 4 hours were brutal. Marcus presented Global Tech's vision. Solid, safe, traditional corporate strategy. Then I presented Marwood's approach, innovative, people-focused, built on the proven results we'd achieved in just 6 months. The board asked sharp questions. We both answered thoroughly. But the entire time, I could feel Benjamin watching me, and it was deeply unsettling. The board deliberated for 2 hours while we waited in separate rooms. I paced, drinking too much coffee, trying not to think about what it would mean if Benjamin somehow influenced the decision against me. Finally, they called us back. The board chairman stood, his expression neutral. This was one of the most difficult decisions we've faced. Both candidates brought compelling visions. But ultimately, we've chosen to move forward with the merger under Dr. Celine Marwood's leadership as CEO of the combined entity. Relief and triumph flooded through me simultaneously. Marcus Henley shook my hand graciously. Congratulations. I look forward to working under your direction. Then the chairman added something unexpected. We'd like to offer Mr. Henley the position of COO, and we have one mid-level consulting position available for strategic advisory. We're offering that position to Mr. Crowhurst, should he choose to accept it. Benjamin's face went through a complicated series of emotions. This was it, the only position available to him in an organization I would lead. A mid-level consulting role with no real authority, reporting ultimately to me. The man who'd once called me replaceable, reduced to asking me for permission to work. He stood slowly and approached me, his expression humble in a way I'd never seen before. Dr. Marwood, he said quietly, if the position is still available, I'd like to accept it. But I understand if you'd prefer I decline. Everyone in the room was watching us, sensing the history between us even if they didn't know the details. I looked at Benjamin, really looked at him, and saw someone genuinely changed by loss. I have one question, I said. Why do you want this position? Because I need to learn, he replied. I spent 15 years thinking I knew everything about leadership. Then I watched you rebuild my company in 6 months using principles I'd never understood. If you'll allow it, I'd like to learn from you. Not as your competitor or your equal, but as someone who finally understands how much he doesn't know. The room was completely silent. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, humiliated on that stage, shaking in my cubicle, believing I was replaceable. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the pain that had transformed into purpose. "You can have the position," I said finally. "But understand this, I won't mentor you. I won't hold your hand. You'll do the work, prove your value, and earn your place like everyone else. No special treatment, no shortcuts. Can you handle that?" "Yes," he said simply. "Thank you." As he walked back to his seat, I felt something release inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but something like closure. Benjamin had finally learned the lesson he needed, even if it had cost him everything to learn it. The merger finalized 6 weeks later. I stood before 7,000 employees, from both companies, gathered in person and virtually, as the CEO of the newly formed Marwood Global Technologies. It was the largest company I'd ever led, the biggest responsibility I'd ever held. And looking out at all those faces, I felt the weight of every person depending on me to lead with integrity. "I started my career being told I was replaceable," I said, my voice carrying through the auditorium and across the video feeds. "I was humiliated publicly, demoted quietly, and dismissed as insignificant by someone who should have valued my contributions." I saw Benjamin in the audience, sitting in the mid-level employee section, listening carefully. But that experience taught me something crucial about leadership. The moment you start believing people are replaceable is the moment you've already failed as a leader. Every person brings unique value. Every voice deserves to be heard. Every contribution matters. I outlined my vision for the company: transparent communication, meritocratic advancement, innovation rewarded, and a culture built on mutual respect rather than fear. "We're going to build something unprecedented here," I said. "Not just a profitable company, but one that proves you can succeed while treating people with dignity. That's my promise to each of you." The applause was overwhelming. After my speech, dozens of people came up to share their stories. How they'd felt undervalued at previous jobs, how they were excited to work somewhere that prioritized people, how they believed in what we were building. Benjamin approached near the end, waiting patiently while I spoke with others. When it was finally his turn, he said simply, "That was the kind of speech I should have given 15 years ago. Thank you for showing me what leadership actually looks like." Then he asked a question that surprised me. "Dr. Marwood, I'd like your advice on something. How do I earn back trust after spending years destroying it?" I considered his question carefully. People were still milling around, but this felt like a private moment despite the public setting. "You don't earn trust back, Benjamin," I said. "You build new trust through consistent actions over time. Every day, you show up and do the work with integrity. Every interaction, you treat people with respect. Eventually, people stop seeing who you were and start seeing who you've become. But it takes years, not weeks." He nodded slowly, absorbing this. "I know I can't undo the damage I caused. But I want you to know that watching you lead these past months has been humbling. You do everything I failed to do. You listen, you empower, you credit others for their work. You're the leader I pretended to be but never was." There was no manipulation in his voice, no attempt to curry favor. Just honest reflection. "The hardest part," he continued, "is accepting that I had people like you working for me all along, and I was too insecure to let you succeed. I could have built something great if I'd just gotten out of my own way." "Yes," I agreed. "You could have. But you didn't, and now you're paying the price for that. The question is, what do you do with this second chance?" He met my eyes. "I do the work. I prove I've changed through actions, not words. And I hope that someday, I can contribute something meaningful to what you're building here." I nodded. "Then that's what you should do." As he walked away, I felt something like peace settle over me. Benjamin was finally learning the lesson about leadership, humility, and the value of people. It had cost him his company, his position, and his pride. But maybe, eventually, it would make him into someone worth working with. For now, I had a company to run. 7,000 people depending on me to lead with integrity and wisdom. And I was ready for that challenge. 6 months into leading Marwood Global Technologies, I called Benjamin into my office for a formal review. He'd been working in the consulting division, taking assignments without complaint, producing solid work without drama. His supervisor's reports were consistently positive, reliable, professional, humble. The Benjamin who'd once ruled through fear had been replaced by someone I barely recognized. "You've done well," I told him as he sat across from my desk. "Your performance reviews are strong. Your team speaks highly of your contributions." "Thank you," he said. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." I pulled out a document I'd been preparing for weeks. "I want to offer you something. Not because you've earned it through past accomplishments, but because you've demonstrated genuine change." His eyes widened slightly. "I'm expanding the consulting division and need a director. Someone who can manage a team, develop strategy, and work directly with clients. The position reports to my COO, and ultimately to me. Are you interested?" For a long moment, he just stared at me in disbelief. "You're offering me a director position? After everything?" "I'm offering you a chance to prove you've learned what leadership actually means," I corrected. "This isn't about forgiveness or forgetting the past. It's about recognizing that people can change, and that growth should be rewarded when it's genuine." He looked down at his hands. "I don't know what to say. Say yes or no. But understand, if you take this position and revert to your old behaviors, I'll remove you immediately. No second chances this time. This company is built on respect and dignity, and I won't compromise that for anyone." "I understand," he said. "And yes, I want the position. Not because of the title, but because I want to contribute meaningfully to what you're building. I want to be part of something good for once, instead of destroying it." I slid the offer letter across my desk. "Then prove it. Show me that the Benjamin Crowhurst who humiliated me on that stage is gone. Show me that you've become someone better." He signed the letter with trembling hands. "Thank you, Celine. I know I don't deserve this, but I swear I'll make you proud." 1 year after taking over as CEO, I stood before our annual shareholders meeting presenting results that exceeded every projection. Revenue was up 140%. Employee retention had improved dramatically. Client satisfaction scores were the highest in company history, and our stock price had nearly tripled. Marwood Global Technologies had become one of the fastest-growing innovation firms in the industry. After the formal presentation, I opened the floor for questions. One shareholder asked about our company culture, what made us different from competitors. I smiled, thinking back to that moment on stage when Benjamin had called me replaceable, the humiliation that had almost broken me. "Our success comes from a simple principle," I said. "We believe every person has irreplaceable value. Not because of their title or their pedigree, but because of their unique perspectives, talents, and contributions. The moment a leader starts treating people as disposable is the moment that company begins to die." I saw Benjamin in the audience, sitting in the directors section now, having proven through a year of consistent, humble work that he'd genuinely changed. He was taking notes, listening intently, still learning. "I learned that lesson the hard way," I continued. "Someone once told me I was easily replaceable. And in trying to prove him wrong, I discovered something more important. Nobody is replaceable. Everyone matters." That's not just philosophy. It's sound business strategy. Companies that value their people outperform companies that don't. It's that simple. The room applauded. As the meeting concluded, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. I opened it and smiled. It was from a struggling tech company asking if Marwood Global might be interested in discussing acquisition possibilities. Another failing company that needed saving. Another opportunity to prove that leadership built on respect and dignity wasn't just morally right, it was profitable. I looked out at the city from my office window, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. From a cubicle near the interns to the CEO's office of a billion-dollar company. From being called replaceable to proving that nobody truly is. Never let someone call you replaceable, I whispered to myself. Not even for a moment. Because the moment you accept that label is the moment you stop fighting for the value you know you have. My phone rang, the struggling tech company's CEO, eager to talk. I smiled and answered. There was more work to be done, more companies to save, more people to empower. And I was just getting started.